listening to the Straight to Video podcast with Rob Lane.
All right, how you been? I hope you're well, and thanks for tuning in to episode 222 of the Straight to Video podcast. I hope you're enjoying all the chats I bring to you each week, and today I want to introduce you to one of the creators of an incredible YouTube channel which I'm regularly glued to whenever it releases new content, as it's a trip down memory lane which you'd never expect to see in such detail and fun. Today on the show I check in with Darrell Hazelrig from the brilliant YouTube channel Eric and Darrell, which he hosts with his childhood friend of over 30 years, Eric Fullerton. Now, Eric and Darrell grew up in Hunstville, Alabama in the USA, and upon getting video cameras in their teens, they proceeded to capture as much of their time on film as they could. And so far, over 100,000 subscribers to their channel are stoked that they did. If you grew up in the late 80s and early 90s, maybe loved hard rock bands like Motley Crue or Kiss, or just hark back to those times of hanging out with your mates with nothing to do other than listen to music and have fun, then this channel is custom made for you. It's hard to put into words why it's so special, so I just urge you to check out Eric and Darrell on YouTube and you'll see what I mean. This Straight to Video podcast is proudly presented to you in association with our friends Affinity Photo. It's an incredible piece of photo editing software which I've been using for graphic design the past couple of years. If you like the podcast's episode artwork you see each week, that's done through Affinity, and it's an extremely affordable alternative to other programs on the market. So please check them out at affinity.serif.com. During our talk, Darrell and I chat all things 80s, his introductions to the bands he fell in love with, his first concerts, the response from the world to his and Eric's videos, the now almost legendary band Macabre, and how he feels about looking back on that brilliant time. We also chat about how the band Nickelback recently reached out to the filmmakers to use some of their old clips in their new music video, Those Days, which you can watch on YouTube. I hope you enjoy this as much as I did chatting, and please hit up and enjoy Eric and Darrell's 80s adventures. But right now on the Straight to Video podcast, let's talk with Darrell Hazelrig.
Hey, Rob.
How you doing, man? You all right?
Doing all right. How are you?
Pretty good. Thanks ever so much for doing this for us. I know it's been a while setting it up, and sorry for the reschedule just the other week.
I did it to you. You do it to me. That's all fair. Fair dinkum, as they say in Australia.
There you go, man. There you go. How was your Christmas and New Year? And you had a birthday as well, right?
Yeah, they keep coming.
Tell me about it.
Right.
So where are you? You out in Atlanta or Georgia?
Atlanta, yeah.
How long you been out there?
I've been in Atlanta for 16 years. Yeah. I actually finished college here, university, my last 2 years. And that was, well, I moved here in December 96 until summer of 99.
Right.
So this is my second stint in Atlanta.
If we can, I want to talk about the success of the Eric and Darrell YouTube channel, as I'm excited to hopefully get some of this show's listeners on board, as I think they're the perfect audience.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So we might cover a bit of well-trodden ground, but definitely want to take a few left turns and get some other memories which perhaps haven't been covered on the channel yet.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So for those that aren't familiar, the Eric and Darrell YouTube channel was started by your childhood friend, Eric Fullerton, I think, was it like 6 years ago or something like that?
Yeah, actually, he started it as Eric's Home Movies with the thought of just preserving all these old videos. Put them up on YouTube and there they'll stay and the tapes won't degrade. Just a storehouse, really. And it's funny if you go back and look at the analytics of the channel, like for years, nothing. It's a flat line. Nothing. No one watched anything. No one knew about it. No subscribers for like 4 years. And then pandemic, everyone's bored at home, and I don't know, it just took off from there.
The two of you were like metalheads back in the late 80s. You both grew up in Huntsville, Alabama.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it was like during lockdown, like the now world famous video Metalhead Teens in a Record Store, which to date has racked up, I had a look, it's up to, well, almost 2.5 million views.
Yeah.
That's just crazy.
It is.
Like say, scrolling back through the videos, there was a lot of content on that channel. Was you working together with Eric, or was you just kind of like checking in every now and again when he was uploading the videos?
Actually, it was not on my radar at all.
Wow.
Yeah, like a couple of years prior to when he started the channel, he was like, hey, I'm digitizing all of my old 8mm tapes. I've got this little box where I can, pull them in. Can I do yours as well? And I was like, yeah, saves me the trouble of ever having to do this.
Yeah, that's the most boring job in the world. You go for it.
Right. So the next time I was in town, I just brought my box with me and left him at his house. Yeah. And then I don't think he even told me that he had created this channel or anything. He didn't send me a link to it at all, because he wasn't really trying to share it. It was just literally for him a place to store the videos. And it wasn't until he posted the Metalhead Teens in a Record Store video, because suddenly I get this message. It wasn't a message. It was in my feed on Facebook, a link to that video. And I'm like, wait a minute, that's Larry. And I know exactly what video this is. And people I didn't even know were talking about it. And there was a link to Reddit articles. And I'm like, what is going on? So it was then, I found out, it's on Eric's home movie channel. And then I contacted him and I was like, sadly, I was almost put off about it. Because I was like, what did you do? What? I didn't at first see the potential of what could be done. But after talking about it for a while and looking at what was going on, then we came up with this idea. I was like, why don't we just pursue this? We can change the name of the channel to Eric and Darrell, and we can just start putting up all of our videos, and we can have videos of us talking about it. And I'm like, okay, I've got nothing else to do right now.
Was there anything in particular you think that caused that one video to blow up? Was it, you think, the thumbnail of Larry looking like everybody did back in the late 80s? Or what was it?
I mean, here's the deal. Larry didn't look like everyone else in the 80s.
Right.
Our age, we wanted to look like that. He was able to pull it off. So he was like a step above all the other kids.
Everybody else's hair's curling at the collars and he's managed to pass the collar.
Yeah, right. I couldn't get that hair. I didn't have that kind of hair. I was so envious. And on top, my parents, they tolerated it at best.
Yeah.
His parents, or his mother, just let him go. So he could wear all the shirts. He could, have his hair cut however he wanted. So yeah, he was really rocking the look perfectly. So I think, seeing this young guy with that look in the thumbnail just sparked memories for everybody, and they just had to click.
Super. I mean, the record shop in the video, it's Sunburst Records, which I believe no longer exists.
Correct, yeah.
Was that your main record shop back then, or was that just one for cheap records?
No, that was our main record shop because we could walk there. So our neighborhood was essentially behind it. So it was within walking distance. So 2 kids, no car, we could just walk down to the store, and we could scrounge up $2 because all of the used records were $2. So we could scrounge up $2, walk down to the record store, and hopefully pick up something cool.
You buy this one, I'll borrow it.
Yeah.
I'll buy the next one. You can borrow that one. So where'd you get all the new releases from?
Well, we'd go to the mall. Mainly, Camelot Music was a very popular store at the mall that we'd go to for the new records.
Yeah.
It's funny, I hear a lot of comments on our channel that it's the late 80s. You guys weren't listening to tapes. You weren't buying tapes. And I'm sure a lot of kids were, but I guess it was just our experience. I had older parents. They had a record player. The only thing that could play music in our household was a record player.
That's quite interesting. I'd not thought about that. Because 88, 89, it was all tapes.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we didn't have a tape player, so I just bought records because I knew I could play them at home.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Who were some of the early bands you were ever really into? I know you were big Kiss fans, Motley Crue, Metallica. Was it just all of the above, or was there one band that really blew your mind from the start and you were all in from then? Do you remember?
Well, I can tell you our strange journey. So 85, 86, maybe. I had a friend named Adam, and he had older siblings that were 10 years older than us. So I would go over to his house, and his sister had a bunch of tapes, Motley Crue. But I think the first thing I saw actually over there was Run DMC, their first album. So I borrowed that from him and brought it home and showed it to Larry, and we started listening to it, and we became huge Run DMC fans. This is way before we were into rock and roll. So we're just Run DMC, Run DMC. And then somehow a Twisted Sister tape showed up at my house. Now, I was just talking about how we didn't have any way of playing tapes. We had a tape player. Those long tape players with a really crappy speaker. And then most people like used them for voice memos or whatever. That was the only tape player that I had in my household. So it sounded like crap. But if I came across a tape and I wanted to listen to it, that was the thing we listened to. And which was cool because we could go out in the backyard and play whatever game we're playing and play the tape. So I think Twisted Sister was probably the first rock music that we ever like sat down and listened to. And we're like, what is this?
Did it scare you, or was it exciting? Or because when you're young, I think sometimes it did for me anyway. Some rock bands are like, that's a bit scary, that is.
Well, since 82, when I moved into the house in the neighborhood where Larry lived, that was the first time I ever saw MTV. And so that became my life. I just had MTV on all the time.
Just sat there and just watched videos all day.
Yeah, just watch videos over and over and over again. And I didn't care what it was. You know, it's like Duran Duran, or I remember Photograph. They were playing Photograph by Def Leppard constantly on MTV. And then it would be like Cyndi Lauper. So like I would just take whatever they were feeding me and I would just sit there and watch it. But I wasn't like, oh my God, I need to have this music and just play it on my own. That was just like my stereo. MTV was. So I was accustomed to music, but for some reason it didn't click yet to actually go and get the music myself and just listen to it and get totally enthralled. But for some reason that Twisted Sister tape, it starts off and there's like this little ting, ting, it's fading in. Twisted Sister, come out and play. I don't know. It just draws you in. And then that guitar riff at the very beginning. And we're like, what is this? And then my buddy Adam, he let me borrow his sister's tape of Shout at the Devil.
Right.
And then it was all over. So we heard Motley Crue and we were just like, this is it. This is our band.
Yeah.
We love this.
Was it because it was dangerous? I mean, like Shout at the Devil back then, it was like, whoa.
Oh, yeah. No, but we loved that. We were like,
yeah.
Oh, my God, this is so subversive and our parents would hate this, you know? So, yeah.
Yeah. Game over.
That was when I was like, I need to own this. So then I was like trying to buy albums after that. And I don't really know how I got into Kiss. I was trying to think about that earlier.
Yeah, because early Kiss were big for you, weren't they? Like, not necessarily the current stuff they were doing in the late 80s. It was like early Kiss.
Yeah, it wasn't the 80s stuff. Like, we got into the 70s Kiss big time. I bought a record off of a girl 2 houses down from me. And it was one of these compilation packages of records. It was the first 3 albums, and it was called The Originals. It had all 3 records in this like gatefold thing. And Larry kicks my ass over this because he's like, do you know how much that collection is worth nowadays?
Oh, no.
And I have no idea what happened to it. I think my mother threw it out. My mother did not like the rock and roll. So over the course of my childhood, there was this whole back and forth between me and especially my mother.
Oh, man. I don't recall what the first video was I saw of yours, whether it was the Metalhead Teens one or if it was one of your aging metal band videos, where you compare singers back in the day to how they are now, which is always fun. Any plans for more of those, or have you covered most of the bands you're listening to?
We're actually going to expand it. We've got a new show title. It's going to be Aging 80s. We're going to go into some of the new wave stuff.
Yeah.
And we're also going to revisit some of the hair band stuff. I don't know if you get into the debate over what is metal. Like, we haven't done Slayer or some of the other heavier bands. So we're going to go back and do some of those. So yeah, those are coming up.
That's cool. Because you in particular, you beat down on a few more of the more poppier hair metal bands. But I've noticed Eric keeps a little bit quiet on that. I get the impression he was maybe into a lot more of the lighter, more radio-friendly bands. Yeah.
White Lion, Warrant. Yeah.
Talking my language now. As we mentioned, you were all huge Motley Crue fans, and I love your story about the band Pretty Boy Floyd and their debut album.
Yeah.
Where did you find that LP?
Yeah, so Larry brought this to my attention. We were researching Motley Crue, buying every album that we could get our hands on. And so we had learned of the story of the Leather Records version of their first album, Too Fast for Love. But you couldn't find that anywhere in Northern Alabama. So I think we just found it mentioned in like some of the rock and roll magazines, you know,
like Hit Parader or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. So we found some of the track listings, and there were like 2 songs that aren't on the Elektra version. And we were like, oh, there's Motley Crue songs that we haven't heard. It was like this elusive thing, like, how are we ever going to hear this? And then it was Larry who brought Pretty Boy Floyd to my attention because he's like, dude, there's this band and they covered one of those songs off the Leather Records version and it's coming out.
I'm trying to think what year was Leather Boys with Electric Toys. When was it? It was like 88, 89, was it? Something like that?
Something like that.
So that's a long time after the Motley Crue debut.
Yeah, because that would have been like 81 or something like that. Yeah. So yeah, I think we both bought a copy of that at Sunburst, just ran home as fast as we could. And I think we went to my house, put it on my record player, and immediately, like, I don't know, just the opening notes were like, this is a Motley Crue song. This is totally a Motley Crue song. We were just over the moon. I still have that record to this day. A lot of my other records have vanished over the years, but I still have that one.
There's some good pop metal tunes on that album, man.
Yeah.
And I think if I get my facts right, that was produced by Howard Benson, who went on to be like the producer for so many big names in like the late 90s, 2000s.
Oh, wow.
And I think like Pretty Boy Floyd, he keeps that a little bit quiet. He's done stuff like My Chemical Romance and Hoobastank and all those kind of bands. He went on to be the go-to guy for them. But yeah, early in the career, it was Pretty Boy Floyd, South Gang, Tough, Bang Tango, all those kind of bands. That's where he cut his teeth.
Oh, yeah.
So, did many bands come through your area to play live shows? Like, what was the first concert you got to see live?
My first concert that I went to, it was November of 1987. I was in the 6th grade. It was Motley Crue, Girls, 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 and an unknown band called Guns N' Roses opened up for them.
Holy crap.
No one had ever heard of them. Axl got up there and was like, we got this new video coming out on MTV. And everyone was like, who is this? Get off stage. We want Motley Crue. But yeah, like nobody gave two shits about Guns N' Roses.
So the first band you saw live officially was Guns N' Roses?
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. Where was it at?
It was in Hunstville. There's this kind of stadium called the VBCC, the Von Braun Civic Center. I saw Guns N' Roses and Motley Crue, and that was 87. And then like all the big bands came through Huntsville. Rat, Bon Jovi, Kiss. A lot of the tours back then were like these multi-band lineups. So you'd get like Cinderella, Bullet Boys, and they were all opening for Bon Jovi.
Yeah. Crazy lineups, really, when you look back. It's like, dang.
Yeah.
All these bands had like hit videos on MTV, every single one on this lineup. It's crazy.
Yeah. And tickets were like $25.
Who did you go to that first Motley Crue show with?
My buddy Tommy Tacon, who is slowly being introduced into the channel. He was a character back in the day.
Did you have good seats or was you on the floor? Do you remember?
So I was all of 11 years old.
About to get your mind blown.
Yeah. And I stayed on the floor and made my way up to the very front. And about halfway, I think, through Motley Crue's set, I couldn't take it anymore and I had them pull me out. The bouncers pulled me over the railing and I had to go and find a seat up in the decks, but it was worth it.
I'm glad that's not just me for my first gig. My first gig experience was Iron Maiden and I had the same thing. About halfway through, I had to get pulled out.
Yeah, because the throngs of people behind you are just like, they want to be where you are. And so everyone's just pushing. And my little 11-year-old body couldn't take it.
Was that before or after the Tommy Lee drum solo?
Oh, good question. You know what? I think it must have been before because I have a memory of like being like further back, getting a better look at it. And it was actually probably for the better because I really got to see the whole, rig rise up and come out and the whole spinning around.
Awesome.
It was like being in the Wild Side video. It was awesome.
Yeah. Were there any like local bands in Huntsville doing the hard rock thing? Do you remember? Or was you too young because they were doing like bars and stuff?
Yeah, that was completely off my radar.
Yeah.
I know a lot of punk stuff was going on around that time locally because like a lot of the punk bands would hang out at Sunburst. So you'd see some of those guys.
Cool.
And there was this great indie club. It was this shithole back in this neighborhood in this old house. They had converted into a bar and it was called Tip Top Cafe.
Right.
So many Nowadays, recognizable big acts had come through there early in the day, like Concrete Blonde. I want to say Jane's Addiction, but that was by the 90s.
I think I perhaps know the answer to this. What happened to all your old band t-shirts? Did your mom throw them away if she wasn't into the rock and roll thing?
I do believe that was their fate.
I keep seeing this Dr. Feelgood shirt in all your videos. I'm like,
Yeah. That had to have been my favorite shirt back in the day. And it's funny, I don't have a lot of footage of my room decked out in the metal posters. And Larry likes to tell this story. My dad paid me $50 to take them down.
So good. Did you? He's like, yes, fine, I'll do it.
Yeah, $50. Okay, I'll go buy some records with it. Like, it must have been right around the time I got my camcorder, because my early videos, there's just nothing on the walls.
I know Larry had all like the spandex and stuff like that. Where was he getting all his gear from? Was it like mail order stuff, or was it like a store you could go to?
No, there was like this rock and roll store at the mall.
No way.
Yeah.
Way before Hot Topic, pre-Hot Topic.
Yeah. Yes. This is like the way precursor to Hot Topic.
Yeah.
They had all the rock and roll t-shirts, all the posters. You could get leather jackets there. You could get spikes. They also had ninja stuff for some reason, was a big thing. You could buy swords, and we'd just go in and look at stuff, maybe buy a pen, because that's all we had the money for.
Just like an independent store, would it have been, do you think?
Yeah, it was just like a local store, and they just, had all that kind of stuff, rock and roll stuff.
So cool.
Yeah.
One element that plays a big part on your channel is the band Macabre, which started in 1987, which was it was like an air band, I guess, not an actual band with musicians.
It was an imaginary band.
Yeah. And you used to do air guitar, air band competitions at the local skating rink. I mean, that's a million miles away from anything in the UK.
Yeah, right?
Just to give people an idea, how did all that come about? Did you join that band?
Yes, I was briefly a member of Macabre.
It's a great name. It's fantastic.
Yeah, it's a mispronunciation of macabre, because the buddy I went to the Motley Crue concert, Tommy, he just like opened up the dictionary and like flipped through it and found this word that had a really cool definition, but he didn't know how to pronounce it. So he just, phonetically pronounced it Macabre.
Yeah.
That's what we're going to call ourselves.
Cool.
Macabre. That sounds cool. So none of us played any instruments. I mean, I think we all kind of tried, but it was always like independent, like at different times of our lives. I know my dad tried to get me to play piano and then guitar. I actually can play guitar somewhat now. I know all the chords. But back then, it didn't stick with any of us. So we never like tried to be a real band, but we loved the image of all those bands.
And the performing.
Yeah. So we wanted to dress up like them, and we wanted all the adoration of the girls like all those bands got. So when we first discovered that like the roller skating rink was doing these performance things where you get up there and you act like you're the band, we were like, we don't have to learn how to play instruments. We can just get up and do this. And it's like we're in a band. We'll get all the screams from the girls, and we'll just feel like we've made it.
How many people were in the audience for those events?
On any Saturday night, there would be like, I don't know, 50, 60, 70 people at the skating rink. So like half of them are girls. So you got like 30 screaming little girls in the audience.
Incredible.
Yeah, we just ate it up.
You're legends. Later on, you made a movie version of the band's story in 2005. It's called Airband.
Yeah.
And that's on the Eric and Darrell channel for people to go and watch.
It's funny because that video, Metalhead Teens in a Record Store, has like kind of come up in our lives more than once. It's like I don't even remember it every time it does. I mean, so there was, when it actually happened, I had just gotten my camcorder and I wanted to shoot everything. So, Larry and I are going to the store. Hey, I'm going to take my camera and then put it away. And then early 2000s, I was really getting into professional filmmaking. I was working on a film at the time in the office that was being shot in Huntsville. And I'm like, just being around it, I got to do something of my own. I want to do something of my own. And I was always looking for that story. And I just happened upon the tape and I'm watching it. And I guess that's what sparked the memory. Plus, Larry had never stopped talking about the good old days when we were doing Airband. Because like he even admits now, like he peaked at 15.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the video just made me think, okay, A, there's a good story here, and B, it would be a nice little thing to do for Larry, kind of immortalize that time period for him. And I didn't realize like how almost exactly I followed the events of that tape in the script itself.
Right.
Just about every moment in the real video has a corresponding scene in the movie.
Awesome. People got to go check it out.
Yeah, turned out to be good inspiration.
Sweet, man. One thing I wanted to ask is I've not seen it featured on the channel yet. You might be able to correct me. Or even, there might not even be any footage of it. I don't know. Both you and Eric have continued to have careers in film and TV, so I would imagine movies were huge for you all growing up. Did you ever film anything at your local video store?
No, we didn't film anything at a video store.
I mean, was that a big thing for you, renting movies and stuff?
Yeah, it was. We had a local shop that we went to that was close to my house called Barry's Video. And it was the coolest. It wasn't like a Blockbuster because, obviously very corporate and very like specific. This was like a shack.
Proper mom and pop style.
Mom and pop, right, exactly. And there's just videos everywhere. Every surface was covered in VHS tapes and you could just get lost in there. It was so cool. In that place, they would also rent VHS cameras. And that was the first time we ever got like a color camera. We rented it from there. Yeah.
That's awesome. Nice one. Because you guys did your own horror movie, Night Stalker, in 1990. Was you big fans of like the horror stuff of the late 80s? The Nightmare on Elm Streets and Friday 13th?
Strangely, I was less so. Eric and Larry both were more into it than me. They'd make me watch it. Like Eric was really into the whole Evil Dead thing. And he was like, you got to see this. You got to see this. So I reluctantly watched it. And I liked that one because it was more horror comedy even back then.
Is he up for the new Evil Dead film that's coming out in a few months? Do you know?
Oh, have we talked about that? I don't even know if we've talked about that.
Evil Dead Rise.
Ah, now is Bruce Campbell involved in that one? He's not, is he?
I think he's like maybe like an executive producer or something like that.
Okay.
So he's behind it. He's done like a quick promo for it saying, here's the new trailer and get ready for it. It looks pretty gruesome.
Nice.
I immediately fell in love with your channel and the stuff you do on there because I used to spend my summers over in the States at my dad's in Mississippi. I used to go over for like 6 weeks during the summer.
Oh, really? What part of Mississippi?
Vicksburg.
Vicksburg. Okay.
Yeah. So right on the border of Mississippi and Louisiana. So like from like 1981, 1982 up until 1992 or 3, every summer I'd come over for like 6 weeks. So for me, I recognize so much in your videos, especially that time frame, that late 80s kind of stuff. It brings back so many memories. You document a lot of your Florida trips, and we used to drive from Vicksburg to Destin, Florida. So there's lots of
cool.
similarities there.
Yeah.
I've been sending your videos to my cousins in the States, just like your McDonald's trips and all that kind of thing, because that was such a big deal and an event back then as a kid going to McDonald's.
Yeah.
I think that's where a lot of people connect with the channel, just these tiny little memories that you perhaps took for granted.
Absolutely.
Wish you could do all over again.
Right. And you don't really realize how much the world is changing around you until all these years later you stop and you can look back and you're like, wow, it's all different. What happened?
Definitely. I mean, the one you did recently
with Eric's mom.
Yeah, you did the same McDonald's. She even sat in the back of the car while she drove. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
The channel has been growing and growing over the past couple of years. Then recently you're approached by the band Nickelback, who asked if they could use some of your clips for the promo video for their new single, Those Days. I mean, that turned out great. How has the mainstream response been since that was released? Have people tracked you down through that video?
Yeah, it's interesting. We've gotten a few comments here and there. They're like, oh, I just discovered you from Nickelback. But what I find more interesting is I'll go to the music video page and I'll flip through the comments. And there's so many people are like, I'm here for Eric and Darrell.
Yes.
So that's pretty cool.
Have you had a chance to meet the band at all, or are they touring, or do you think you'll be able to cross paths with them?
We haven't spoken to the band themselves. We were speaking through their management company. Those guys were awesome. The whole deal, like working it all out, just making us feel comfortable about, licensing them the footage was just really cool. Really nice guys. But they mentioned that they're going to try to get us out to a show when they get around here. And I think they're coming to Atlanta in July.
Right.
Yeah. So who knows? If it happens, we'll definitely have cameras there.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, it'll be part of the channel.
Oh, that's awesome. For you and Eric, what's been some of the most rewarding things the channel has brought for you personally? Have you reconnected with people from the past who you'd lost touch with, or has it just been cool seeing everyone's reaction who grew up around the same time? Has anything jumped to mind?
Not a year has gone by where Eric and I have not been in contact. We've known each other since 1988, and we've seen each other every year since 1988. But as is typical in life, people get into relationships, into careers. I moved away, so things just kind of slow down. I would only see him maybe holidays or whenever I just happened to pop into town. And we both kind of went on our own ways about what we were doing as far as our passion projects. I moved to Atlanta, met a bunch of filmmakers here, started doing a bunch of film stuff here. Eric got involved in a lot of podcast stuff there in Huntsville with some of our other friends. And so that kind of became our creative lives separately from what we did as kids. However, I always included Eric in just about everything I've done. Every short film I made, he had some hand in, whether he did sound effects or something, there was always something for us to contribute to one another's creative projects, even if we weren't doing it nonstop together. But the thing I love most about this channel is it's really brought us back together in the way that we were when we were 12 years old. I just got back from Huntsville last night because I was like, oh, my work is about to start. Now I'm about to get really busy. I have this one weekend. I'll pop over and we'll do some stuff. So we just stayed up all night, shot several videos, just goofing off, being silly. And it's just rolling the clock back 30 years. And I see so many comments on our channel about people missing the 80s, missing that time in their lives, thinking it was a simpler time. Things were just better back then. And I understand where they're coming from, but I also think it doesn't have to be that way. You can make it different, and it's up to you to do so. I mean, we're just back together doing the same thing we did when we were kids and having a blast. And it's no time has passed whatsoever. Yeah. So you can relive those times. It's not just a pretty picture on your screen. You can actually relive those times.
I love hearing that.
Yeah.
The 80s seem to be sticking around though, right? I mean, they always say everything has a 30-year rotation.
Right.
But the 80s are hanging in there. They started coming back in the mid-2000s.
That's what I thought. Yeah. I thought the same thing. Especially some of the bands that were coming out at the time, like the Killers, music that sounded kind of new wavy, that whole thing. I was digging that music. And you'd see a lot of fashion choices that were borrowed from the 80s and stuff. And it hasn't necessarily dropped off. It's kind of endured.
Yeah, I think the 90s are crawling back a little bit. It's with fashion particularly.
Oh, you can leave that back in the 90s, please.
Did you roll with the Motley Crue 1994 album when it came out?
Honestly, I'm not that familiar with it.
Right. You was at that age, same as me, where when everything changed, you were young enough to embrace it. Oh, this is cool. I like what I like, but this is cool as well.
Yeah.
And for me, that Motley Crue album was this is everything I loved, but they've kind of encompassed everything that's cool that's going around at the moment. I loved it, but it kind of divides people.
Well, yeah. I mean, at the time, no one could imagine a Motley Crue without Vince Neil.
Especially if you've grown up right from the beginning, Shout at the Devil and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, right. But by the 90s, so here's the thing about that whole scene, the late 80s. Larry and I were just talking about this yesterday. I went and visited him at his office and we just started talking about life and everything. That scene was so enveloping for a time, and we could not imagine it ever ending. We had no clue that it would ever end. And then that, it was gone. And then just what do you do? I know what I did. I went the complete opposite because my love of all that music came from, it was fed to me by MTV.
Yeah.
It was mainstream. It was what the mainstream was feeding you. And when that all ended, I don't know that I went out of my way, but it just was a natural progression for me to then discover music that was mine.
Right.
And if I told somebody the bands that I liked and they were like, I've never heard of them, I was so elated. I was like, yes, because they're mine. I got into Bauhaus, Peter Murphy, Love and Rockets, Tones on Tails, all that stuff. And it was Eric went to boarding school in ninth grade. He moved away, and it wasn't too far away to where he'd come home on the weekends, but he'd go to school, he'd be there all week, and he comes back with Peter Murphy's Deep album on tape, on cassette. I heard Cuts You Up for the first time, that little violin part that opens up the song. I'm like, I don't know what it was like the first time I heard Motley Crue, right? It was just like, what is this? It was just eye-opening. He's like, oh, this is Peter Murphy. I'm like, oh, this is great. This is great. Just listen to that tape over and over again. And then one day he was like, oh yeah, he used to be the singer of this band called Bauhaus. I'm like, there's more Peter Murphy?
So you were able to rewind again.
Yeah.
Find this whole different world.
Yeah. Went back down and then shot off on another path.
Yeah.
So it was all word of mouth at that point. It was not getting stuff from MTV.
Right.
Unless you were listening to, like, what was that show? 120 Minutes?
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. At this point, I had forsaken MTV. And it was all just word of mouth, you know, like that guy from his boarding school, or like his sister was getting into the Smiths.
Right.
Heard her playing the Smiths in her car. I'm like, okay, I like this. And it was all old stuff.
Yeah.
It wasn't new.
What are you listening to these days? Do you still find new music?
It depends on the time of day. Like, I'll wake up and I'll put on some random ethereal keyboard music.
Right.
And I just find playlists on Spotify. I kind of really got into the whole synthwave thing that was going on.
I remember you putting a playlist up on Spotify, actually. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's some great stuff out there, man.
I know.
Do you like the Midnight?
Yes, the Midnight. Yeah. They are so good. I heard one song by them and I was like, that guy has a really weird voice, but I don't dislike it. And then I'm like listening to the music in the background. I'm like, wow, this is like really well crafted music. For some reason, I didn't search them out. And then I finally heard another song. I'm like, wait, that's got to be the same guy, right?
Yeah.
And then it slowly chipped away at me. And then I was like, okay. So I went to their page on Spotify and I just started listening to everything. I'm like, holy crap, everything is good.
The whole synthwave thing is weird because, like, when it started to get big, you heard it and it was like, oh, this is amazing, because the sound had that time travel element to it. It sounds like the great stuff of the 80s. But then when you dug a bit deeper, like, oh, they all sound great, but not many have got great songs.
Right.
Whereas stuff like The Midnight, these guys have got the hooks and the melodies and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of in closing, Darrell, other than the Metalhead Teens in a Record Store clip, are there any other videos you and Eric are particularly proud of that people should check out when they dive into your channel?
Oh, boy. God, we have so many videos now.
There's a lot of stuff.
Yeah,
There's a lot of stuff.
I don't know. We have and I understand that why people don't necessarily go back and watch these, but we have done a lot of live streams. Some of them, I mean, they can be like 4 hours long. I get it. It's hard to like dig through, but there's like some really fun moments in a lot of those shows.
Right.
They're a blast to do. I've been really digging the live streams. We've actually had to take a little break with my work schedule, especially. It's hard to keep it up. But the remake of Metalhead Teens in a Record Store with Larry and I now, that was a blast to do.
So do a double bill with that.
Yeah, yeah.
The original and the remake.
It was really fun because we went back to the old neighborhood and we went by my old house, and the dudes that lived there just happened to be out in the front yard. And I just immediately ran over to them, just started chatting them up and was trying to be as charming as possible. Next thing I know, they're letting us in. And I hadn't been to my house since 1991.
Wow.
And yeah, I'm like, it's like coming home. We had the couch there and, you know, there's video of my dad sitting over there and da, 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 da. We actually have a lot of footage from touring that house, and we're going to release that as a new video coming up soon.
Super.
Yeah, that's a fun video. We like recreating things. It's a lot of fun to kind of go back to old places and revisit them. We have a video that we're going to be doing later this year where Eric and I go back to the school that we met at, and we're going to tour the school and look at the room where we met in and walk the halls and just pretend like we're 12 again. I'm really looking forward to that one. That's going to be fun.
I love that it's still growing. And like you say, you're introducing new characters, but people from the past are becoming more and more involved in the channel and stuff like that. It's great that it's evolving and growing. And there's a great little community on Facebook that people can join, the Facebook group.
Yeah.
Which is on there and stuff where people share a lot of their own memories and things like that, which I know you guys interact with as well. So yeah, people definitely need to get on board. Darrell, I'll let you go, but I've loved chatting with you, mate. I appreciate your time.
Thanks, Rob. Really appreciate it.
Mate, it's been a blast. Keep doing what you're doing. Thank Eric for me as well for all the work you do. It's a brilliant channel. Sending a massive thanks to Darrell Hazelrig for chatting with me on this episode of the Straight to Video podcast. I can't stress how much fun the Eric and Darrell YouTube channel is, so please head on over and have a watch along with the new Nickelback video for those days. That's all for this episode of the show. As always, we'll be back with a brand new episode next Friday, and if you want to catch up on earlier shows, they can be found wherever you listen to podcasts or over at stvpod.com, where there's also some music videos and a brand new Van Halen inspired t-shirt in our merch store. The 80s Video Shop has also joined YouTube, so please hit up our page and subscribe, where Chris and I will be posting a bunch of videos from the shop. So if you've not seen what we do there, this is a great time to get on board. Alright, once again, hope you're all doing great out there, and thanks for supporting this show. So until we chat again, take care and speak soon.